The stadium lights in Nashville were hypnotic, sweeping across a sea of glitter denim and Swiftie wristbands that pulsed in rhythm with every beat. Taylor Swift was wrapping up her set, glowing under the spotlight like a queen in her castle. The crowd had just finished screaming along to Cruel Summer when the LED backdrop began fading to soft lavender, a cue for her to speak. "This one goes out to every woman who's been told to stay quiet, especially by people in power," Taylor said, her voice smooth but sharp. Applause burst out instantly, but what followed shifted the air. "People like Karoline Levitt," she continued, "who still believe women should smile, stay silent, and sit pretty behind a man." There was a pause, brief but loaded. Even some fans stopped clapping. Backstage, a Fox News producer froze. In her dressing room across the city, Karoline Levitt's phone lit up like wildfire. Her name was trending, again. But this time, it wasn't for something she'd said. It was because Taylor Swift had said her name out loud, on stage, in front of 80,000 people and millions watching online. Within 10 minutes, X, formerly Twitter, exploded. Caroline versus Taylor, Speak Now Politics, Swift shot. First, Caroline didn't blink. She didn't panic. She did what only a few would dare to do. She asked for the full clip, took a breath, and tweeted, "If Taylor wants to speak for women, she shouldn't silence one just because we disagree. I'll respond in my own way, on my terms. Stay tuned." That single post got 2.3 million views in an hour. At the White House the next morning, the press was waiting. "Karoline, will you respond to Taylor Swift's accusations? Are you against women's voices in music? Does this feud represent the culture war?" Karoline adjusted the mic at the press podium, calm and measured. "I'm not here to feud. I'm here to lead. And when pop stars attack public servants for not towing the line, that's not feminism. That's bullying dressed in glitter." Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters typed furiously. But Karoline had only just begun. What the public didn't know? She had something Taylor probably never expected. A document, a connection, a truth buried beneath Taylor's political image. And she was ready to bring it out, piece by piece. It was still early when Karoline arrived at her office in D.C., but her inbox was already on fire. Interview requests, hate mail, love mail. It was a battlefield of opinions, all sparked by one stadium shoutout and one perfectly timed reply. But what the world didn't see was what sat quietly on her desk. A slim, manila folder labeled in thick black ink. Project Atlas, Grant Recipients, 2018 to 2021. Her aide, Ryan, entered cautiously. "This is what you asked for. It took some digging," he said, lowering his voice. "But yeah, it's all there." Karoline opened the folder slowly, scanning line after line, her eyes sharp with focus. And then she paused. Taylor Swift's name appeared, not once but 3 times. Not for her music, not for her tour, but as a financial endorser for an education initiative with strong political ties. And one of those ties? A controversial group that had quietly funneled money into campaigns that targeted conservative women, including Karoline herself. It was subtle, deniable, but real. "She called me dangerous," Karoline muttered, "but she's been funding those trying to cancel me for years." She wasn't angry, she was calculating. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, something her generation often confused with performance. She slid the folder back into her bag and turned to Ryan. "I'm not tweeting this," she said. "I'm saying it live. I want her to hear it, and I want everyone else to feel it." That night, Karoline appeared on Hannity, composed, poised, and unapologetically sharp. "I'm not here to cancel Taylor Swift. I grew up with her music. I know every word of Enchanted," she said with a subtle smile. "But when you weaponize your celebrity to paint other women as backwards or dangerous, just because we don't agree with you, that's not brave, that's hypocritical." Then she dropped the hammer. "And while we're talking truth, maybe your fans would like to know which activist networks you helped fund. Networks that targeted me, my colleagues, and other young conservative women for daring to speak up." Silence in the studio. Even Hannity blinked. Karoline placed the folder on the desk, unopened, but loud in its presence. Online, it was chaos. Swifties clashed with Karoline supporters. TikToks went viral. Truth over glitter started trending. Some fans defended Taylor. Others began asking questions. Is this real? Did Taylor fund political hit jobs? Wait, who's actually silencing who? The lines were no longer clear. And for the first time, Taylor Swift wasn't the only one writing the narrative. Karoline had set the stage. But what she planned to reveal next would strike deeper than any tweet, lyric, or viral video ever could. In the hours after her Hannity appearance, Karoline's phone didn't stop ringing. Supporters, reporters, and even critics flooded her lines. But one call stood out, not because of who called, but because of what was accidentally captured. It came from an anonymous number, a male voice, nervous. "She's not backing down. You said she wouldn't go live." A pause. Then another voice, unmistakably calm but tight, female, sharp, and eerily familiar. "She'll get bored, or the media will crush it. No one cares what some MAGA intern thinks, unless we let them." Karoline froze. She had heard that voice before, too many times. She tapped record on her second phone as her mind raced. Could it be? She forwarded the file to Ryan, who ran it through a voice-matching app. 10 minutes later, he looked up from his screen, pale. "Karoline, that voice matches. With 92% certainty. It's Taylor Swift's publicist." By morning, the clip was online, not from Karoline, but from a third-party account that had intercepted the metadata during the brief livestream. The internet devoured it. Scripted empowerment trended globally. People began to question the narrative. Was Taylor's message really from the heart? Or had it become just another controlled machine, polished and prepared? Karoline didn't comment on the leak. She didn't have to. Instead, she went quiet for 24 hours. Strategic silence. Let the public stir. Let the doubt simmer. And while they did, she prepared her next move. She wasn't aiming at Taylor's music, not her fans. She was aiming at the culture of selective empowerment, where only one kind of woman is allowed to be called brave. The next night, she walked onto the stage at a youth leadership conference in Austin, Texas. No podium, no teleprompter, just her, a handheld mic, and a room full of Gen Z skeptics. "I've been called dangerous, outdated, and fake, all in the name of feminism. But here's what no one wants to admit. Empowerment isn't real if it only applies to women who agree with you. And Taylor, if you truly care about women's voices, you won't try to silence mine." The room erupted, not with full applause, but with attention. Eyes locked, phones raised, even critics leaned in. Karoline had moved the conversation beyond celebrity. She had made it about something bigger. Who controls the microphone in America? And who gets muted? And just when it seemed like the dust might settle, someone from Taylor's team reached out, asking for a private conversation. Karoline's reply? "We'll talk, but not in private. I think the whole country deserves to hear this." The world expected a tweet, maybe an Instagram story. But instead, Karoline surprised everyone with a live, unfiltered appearance on The Morning Wire, a nationally streamed, high-audience political podcast known for long-form debates. Across from her sat the show's host, Nora Lane, a sharp, no-nonsense interviewer. And across the table, seated with polished grace and a carefully neutral expression, Taylor Swift's communications director, Madison King. The audience watching online couldn't believe it. Was this a trap? A setup? Or was Taylor's camp really ready to face the woman they had tried to erase with a single concert comment? Karoline leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes unflinching. "Let's get one thing straight," she said. "I don't hate Taylor Swift. I don't want to silence her. I want her fans to see that you can love her music and still call out double standards when you see them." Madison shifted in her seat. "We're not here to litigate celebrity opinion," she replied. "Taylor simply used her platform to stand for women's rights." Karoline cut in, her voice steady but firm. "She used her platform to name me. To mischaracterize my beliefs in front of 80,000 people, without ever speaking to me, reading what I've written, or understanding where I come from. That's not advocacy. That's performance. Nora raised her brows. Madison opened her mouth to reply, but Karoline wasn't done. She reached into her blazer, pulled out the slim manila folder again, and placed it on the table. You said this wasn't about litigating celebrity opinion. But this, she tapped the folder, this is about actions, not opinions. Inside were verified financial records from public grant programs, dates, donations, connections, several of which traced back to PACs and media campaigns that had quietly smeared young conservative women, including Karoline, using anonymous digital attacks. Taylor's team didn't just support women, she said. They funded networks that tried to silence some. Women like me. The room fell silent. The podcast chat exploded. Not your narrative, her facts over fame. And she brought receipts. Even some Swifties watching live began to hesitate. Wait, is this true? Why didn't anyone report this before? I'm still a fan, but this doesn't sit right. Madison tried to redirect the conversation, back to music, back to vague ideals. But Karoline had already pulled the curtain back. This wasn't about pop, it was about power, and who got to use it unchecked. You don't get to crown yourself the voice of all women, Karoline said quietly, while silencing the ones you don't like. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't dramatic, but it echoed louder than any lyric. And Taylor? She hadn't said a word since the leak. But that silence was starting to sound like surrender. For 3 days, Taylor Swift didn't post a single thing. No photos, no cryptic lyrics, no likes or reposts. For a fan base built on clues and storytelling, the silence was deafening. Meanwhile, the conversation was spiraling out of her control. Major outlets began picking up Karoline's claims, not just conservative media, but independents and even curious progressives. Did Taylor cross a line? Can feminism survive celebrity gatekeeping? Karoline Leavitt's one sentence that changed the conversation. What began as a brief name drop during a concert had become a national reckoning on selective empowerment. Behind the scenes, Taylor's team was scrambling. Her management drafted a response. Her PR team pitched a clarifying post, but every version made her sound either overly scripted or plainly guilty. One advisor warned, "If you speak now, it'll only keep her story alive." Another said, "If you don't, you're conceding the message." But Taylor wasn't just afraid of backlash. She was afraid Karoline had more. And she was right. Because while the media argued and fans debated, Karoline was meeting with women who'd been targeted just like she had. Young conservative journalists, college leaders, even women in tech. Many had been digitally blacklisted by activist firms quietly endorsed by Taylor's broader network. One woman, a 22-year-old campaign aide from Arizona, showed Karoline an email thread she'd received a year earlier. The sender? An executive at a media firm publicly partnered with Taylor Swift's 2019 Vote Loud initiative. The message? You'll never work in this town if you keep talking like that. We don't platform women who enable hate. Her crime? Supporting border security while wearing a cross necklace? Karoline stared at the email, her jaw tight. So much for inclusion, she whispered. She called a press conference for that Friday. Not in Washington, not on TV, but at Belmont University in Nashville. Taylor's turf. The invitation read, "This is not a fight. It's a conversation America needs. I'm not silencing Taylor. I'm asking why she's allowed to silence me." Friday came. The stage was modest, the lighting clean. Karoline stood alone behind a simple podium. No crowd behind her, no handlers in sight. Just the truth. I don't hate Taylor Swift. I don't question her talent. But when you call me dangerous for my beliefs, while backing systems that blacklist other women just like me, that's not bravery. That's branding. She raised the folder again, opened it, and this time read names, not to shame, but to show, to expose a pattern. Feminism can't be filtered through a spotlight, she said. It belongs to all of us, or it means nothing. The press clapped, not out of agreement, but out of impact. Even critics admitted it. She wasn't backing down. She was building something. And Taylor? She could no longer afford to say nothing. But what she said next would only make it worse. On Sunday night, Taylor Swift finally spoke. Not through an interview, not on a podcast, but with a carefully written Instagram note, white text on a lavender background, titled simply, "To all the women watching." The message, signed with her initials, didn't name Karoline directly, but it didn't need to. It was clear who it was about. When we amplify certain voices, it's not to silence others. It's to stand up for progress, inclusivity, and compassion. I will never apologize for using my platform to support what I believe is right. There were no specifics, no apology, just vague references to values and responsibility. But the timing backfired, because just hours earlier, the Daily Ledger had published a piece titled, "The Silence That Protected a System: How Celebrity Networks Fund Political Bullying." And right in the center of that exposé was a quote from one of Taylor's former interns. "We were told to avoid inviting conservative women to panels, even if they were qualified." The phrase was, "not the look we want." The internet went into meltdown. "Not the look" trended faster than any song release. Creators stitched side-by-side clips of Taylor's empowerment speeches with screenshots of Karoline's press conference. Influencers who had stayed neutral began picking sides. Still love the music? But this ain't it. Karoline made her point. Taylor dodged it. Empowerment without inclusivity is just PR. In D.C., Karoline didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. She stayed silent, for now. But her office window overlooked a growing scene below. A crowd, mostly young, holding signs. Not against Taylor, not for Karoline, but for something deeper. We want truth, not teams. Faith does not equal hate. You can love Swift and still question the silence. Karoline turned to Ryan. It's not about her anymore. It's about how far they'll go to control the story. Ryan nodded. They're losing the narrative. Karoline looked down at the crowd again, her voice soft but steel. They never owned it to begin with. That night, she received a direct message. Verified, blue checkmark, no press release attached. From Taylor Swift. You made your point. Maybe it's time we talk, just us. Karoline stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, not just us. America's listening now. And she hit send. It happened in New York, behind the towering glass of an upscale midtown venue. Cameras weren't allowed inside. But that didn't matter, because the world was already watching. The press had dubbed it the Summit. No handlers, no publicists. Just Karoline Leavitt and Taylor Swift, seated across a long, simple oak table. 2 women, 1 room, a nation divided between them. At first there was silence. Karoline folded her hands. Taylor sipped from a glass of water, visibly tense. I didn't expect this to get so loud, Taylor began, her voice low. You said my name on stage, Karoline replied, calm but unyielding. That mic's powerful, but it comes with consequences. Taylor nodded, slowly. I thought I was standing for something. And I thought you were smarter than the Hollywood playbook, Karoline answered. For a moment, Taylor smiled faintly. You don't pull punches, do you? Never had that luxury. There was a pause. Then Karoline leaned forward. Do you know how many girls write to me? Girls who believe in faith, in country, in values you mock without saying it outright. They hear your songs, then hear you call women like us dangerous. What are they supposed to think? That their beliefs make them lesser? Taylor looked down, biting her lip. That was never my intention. Then why fund groups that blacklist voices like mine? Why call out my name without learning my story? Taylor hesitated. I didn't know all of it. Karoline raised an eyebrow. You have $1 billion brand and one of the smartest teams in media. You knew what you were doing. You just didn't expect me to answer. Taylor sighed, and for the first time her carefully held composure cracked. You're right. I didn't. And now, I don't know how to fix it. Karoline didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn letter, a printed email from a teenage girl in Georgia. She got suspended from school for quoting one of your lyrics in a speech about faith, Karoline explained. Not because of the lyric, but because they assumed she was being sarcastic, because of what they think you represent. Taylor read it in silence, then said only, I didn't want this. Karoline stood. Then do something about it. Not behind a screen, not with filters. Tell the truth. To them. She nodded toward the window, toward the dozens of protesters and supporters gathering outside. Not just Swifties, not just patriots, Americans. And then she walked out. Outside, the cameras caught her stepping into the light, her signature cross necklace shining beneath the fall sun. A reporter shouted, Did Taylor apologize? Karoline paused, then turned. She listened. That's a start, but we'll see what comes next. The next morning, the internet braced itself. Taylor Swift had gone live. No handlers, no carefully curated post. Just her, sitting in front of a muted gray wall, hair tied back, makeup simple, eyes direct. This won't be long, she began, because sometimes the longer you talk, the less people hear. There was no smile, no performance. Last week, I used my stage to criticize a woman I've never met. I thought I was standing up for progress, but I realized I was repeating the very thing I've spoken against, silencing others for thinking differently. She paused. Karoline Leavitt didn't just clap back. She reminded me that power, mine included, comes with responsibility. Not just to those who agree with me, but especially to those who don't. The live stream lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds, but by the end, Respect Both Women and Olgor Unity is Power were both trending worldwide. The public reaction was divided, but clearer. Some Swifties felt betrayed, others felt proud. A viral tweet read, You can love Taylor and still admit she made a mistake. You can respect Karoline and still disagree with her. This is what grown-ups look like. Karoline didn't respond with a tweet. Instead, she issued a short statement through her team. Taylor's words mattered, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. We may never agree on everything, but if women like us can talk, maybe the rest of America can too. Later that week, the two women appeared separately at different universities, but with eerily similar themes. Taylor spoke at NYU about growth through failure. Karoline addressed a crowd at Liberty University. It's not about winning arguments. It's about refusing to let your beliefs be silenced, even when the world tells you to sit down. For once, fans from both sides started commenting the same thing. This is how it should have started all along. But behind closed doors, both women knew this wasn't an ending. It was an opening act for a conversation the country had avoided for too long. Because when faith meets fame, when country values collide with pop power, and when women stop shouting long enough to listen, that's when the story really begins. Just as the dust seemed to settle, the backlash began, not from Taylor or Karoline, but from the political fringes that had quietly benefited from their fight. A leaked memo from a major political PAC read, The Karoline Taylor narrative is softening. Push harder. Reinforce the divide. Polarization is profitable. Across social media, bots and fringe influencers began stirring old footage, twisting quotes, editing Karoline's Liberty University speech to make it sound combative. Even Taylor wasn't spared. Clips from past interviews were re-uploaded out of context, portraying her as weak for folding to pressure. The narrative had become too powerful for the machine to ignore. It's like they want us to keep hating each other, Ryan muttered, flipping through the latest posts. Karoline nodded, watching as algorithm-fueled outrage churned once again. Of course they do. she said. Unity doesn't trend. War does. That night, Karoline appeared on a live stream, but this time, not alone. Next to her sat a surprise guest, Aaliyah James, a progressive activist from Detroit who had once openly criticized Karoline in multiple op-eds. Let's be clear, Aaliyah said into the camera. I still disagree with Karoline on 70% of things. Karoline grinned slightly. 80, if we're honest. Aaliyah chuckled. But I'll say this. She showed up. She listened. And she didn't ask me to change my values, just to stop pretending like mine are the only ones that matter. Together, they dismantled the idea that American women could only be powerful if they were identical in belief. You don't need to erase your faith to be included, Karoline said. And you don't need to cancel someone to make your point, Aaliyah added. The livestream hit 2 million views in 24 hours. Listen, louder began to replace the toxic hashtags. Taylor watched the broadcast from backstage at her next show. She didn't say anything, but she nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, she looked relieved. Because the fire they had started, one of rage and reaction, was being replaced by something else. Resolve. The kind that didn't need trending hashtags to last. 6 weeks after it all began, after the concert mic, the viral comment, the receipts, the press conference, the summit, and the live stream, America was no longer just watching. It was talking. For the first time in years, a cultural firestorm didn't end in cancellation or total division. It ended in momentum. Karoline Leavitt, once dubbed a fringe MAGA voice, was now a central figure in a larger movement, one not just about conservatism, but about ownership of personal truth. And Taylor Swift? She didn't lose fans. She gained clarity. That month, both women were invited to a bipartisan women's summit in Washington, D.C. It wasn't televised, no grand stage, just 50 influential women from across the political and cultural spectrum. Some expected Karoline and Taylor to avoid each other. Instead, they sat side by side. And when a moderator asked, "How do we make room for every voice without tearing each other apart?" Karoline answered first, "By being willing to take hits for what we believe, but also being brave enough to admit when our beliefs need deeper roots." Taylor followed, her voice softer than usual. "And by remembering, disagreement isn't danger, silence isn't always peace, and empathy isn't weakness." No one clapped. No one needed to, because sometimes the loudest change comes in the quietest room. That evening, Karoline walked alone across the National Mall. No cameras, no crowd, just her, the Capitol in the distance, and the cool wind tugging at the collar of her coat. The cross necklace she always wore glinted beneath her scarf. A notification buzzed. It was a photo. A group of high school girls gathered at a debate meet in Iowa. They held up a sign, "You made us brave enough to speak." She smiled, closed her phone, and whispered to the air, "That's what this was for. Not for the clicks, not even for the win, but to prove that truth doesn't belong to fame, or party, or popularity. It belongs to the bold." One sentence started it. One moment could have ended it. But two women decided to do something different. Listen, speak, and lead. In a world addicted to outrage, they reminded us that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just tells the truth. And that's how a culture war turned into a conversation. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, inspired you, or challenged you, subscribe for more bold, untold stories here on Surprising Stories. See you in the next one.